Hello, welcome to FPL Emergency Room. It's the Big Man Bakar show here on Chasing Green Arrows. I do not usually have the joys of a Wednesday afternoon with you, sir, but how are you?
Thanks for having me, Dean. Hello and welcome to all the listeners and viewers. It's nice to have you on here, and this is our first episode together this season, so I'm really
It
looking
is.
forward to it.
Yeah, absolutely. I haven't spoken to you at all this season so far. I haven't checked the latest table because we are in the same like mini league for CGA. I'm going to
Yeah,
quickly. I don't think we're miles apart. Well, neither of us doing particularly well. Yeah, I'm on
yeah.
409 points. You on 395. I mean, how are you? How have you been struggling through, mate? What have you? What have been the highs and the lows for you?
The season started off pretty well. It's basically been the last 2 or 3 weeks. Ever since I've decided to load up on United and Chelsea, my season has gone downhill, particularly Chelsea.
Yeah.
It's been downhill ever since, and it's just going through one of those runs where every single decision is going against me, and you do go through these
It
these
happens,
spells, and I
man.
feel it happens to the best of us. So it's all right. It's a spell. I hope it will end soon. And as long as I keep playing rationally, I mean, it's the decision making that really matters. The outcome really isn't in our hands, is it?
Yeah, I mean, it actually makes me feel a bit better when people like you are in the same boat because I'm like, okay, this guy definitely knows what he's doing. He put a lot of effort into this and understands the ins and outs of the actual game, whereas I've typically been more of a casual until the last 18 months. And so to hear that, like, the diehards go through the same struggles, for me, is actually a relief. Thanks to everybody that's joining us in the comments right now. As CH says right at the top of the comments, be sure to hit the like button on your way in. CH, it is great to have you back with us. A little illness for CH, I think, but looks like back to best. Thank you for joining us again. Everybody else who's also jumping in to the comments today. We're going to go through, we've got a really good show actually lined up today. We're going to be talking about wildcards, must-haves on a wildcard. Also, Man United in disarray at the moment. We're going to talk about what to do with their midfielders. We'll look at a wildcard draft. It's going to be an action-packed hour. We're all going to learn a lot, and hopefully we come out of this a bit more wise about where we are all heading. Before we get into that, I just want to quickly reflect on the Champions League from last night because Saka, I don't know why he's still playing. Like, he was an injury doubt before last weekend. He then played like 75 minutes against Bournemouth, which seemed ridiculous given how easily they were winning. And then last night he comes off a game with an injury in Lons. I mean, I don't want to be missing Saka, but they're playing Man City at the weekend. I don't know what to do with him. What do you think?
Yeah, it's very, very strange to see him being run into the ground for no reason at all. Really, I mean, you're right. He should have been sub around the hour mark before the Bournemouth game. Even, I mean, I'm not even sure why he even started in the first place because it's a game they could have won even without him. But irrespective of that, now that he's been run into the ground, and Arteta did say that it doesn't look good. He's quoted to say that in the
Yeah.
post-match press conference. We've got to wait till Friday for further news, but in the assumption that Saka is out, I think the easiest move is to move him to Son or Madison because of Spurs' fixtures that are coming up, Luton and Fulham in 8
Yeah.
and 9. That's the easy move for everyone to
Yeah.
make. It's a slightly more trickier call if you already own Son and Madison and
Yeah,
you
true. Yeah.
yeah, and you have Saka. In that case, probably an Aston Villa mid, probably Diaby, but Diaby himself is an injury doubt as at the time of recording. We're not really sure whether he's going to play at the weekend. Apparently, he wasn't seen in training, so that's another injury doubt this week. Similarly,
Mm.
there's Bowen. Maybe you can go to Bowen is
Yeah,
decent
Bowen's
pick.
good. Yeah.
Not exactly the best of fixtures in the next 2 weeks. But we don't really have options. I mean, I would have recommended Eze, but even he's injured. So
Yeah.
it's
Everyone's
we're sort of
injured.
yeah, everyone's injured, and we're sort of running short of options. So I mean, I can't possibly sit here and recommend the United mids after what they've been doing in recent weeks. But I mean, it's actually a good point to make because there are not too many options that are standing out apart from Salah in the midfield bracket. Personally, I'm not wildcarding this week, and this is one of the main reasons because, I mean, yes, Bruno and Rashford aren't exactly good picks on paper, but who do you go for? There
Mm.
isn't really a standout option. As long as you can get to Son and Madison, that's enough.
Yeah, absolutely. I have got that temptation to go from Saka to Maddison. Gianni actually does have Maddison, Son, and Saka in his team at the moment. So everyone join us on Friday because it'll be interesting to see what G is plotting around that. Mark says Arteta will play Saka on crutches on Sunday. Geddy says Saka to Son is on the cards for him. Yeah, it's definitely going to be a headache for all of us, but it seems pretty crazy. Savio says, even if Saka starts, how effective will he be given he's likely aching in his bones as well? We don't know even what Arsenal were like without Saka. It's been so long since he didn't start a game. I feel because like Arteta realizes like that's the weak point perhaps in terms of like he's probably the only player in that team that might be irreplaceable. Like Man City have just discovered with Rodri, maybe Saka's the version for Arsenal. But do you want half a version of Saka against Man City? Is that really going to help? We'll soon find out at the weekend. But yeah, thanks to everybody who is just jumping into the chat right now. We are focusing on wildcards today. It's something that's definitely coming into people's minds over the next 2-3 game weeks. I was looking at my team today, actually, for the first time, really thinking, I don't like it. I don't like where I'm at. Like little changes I've made that haven't paid off. Couple of flags showing up. I was like, I feel like I'm at the stage
Yeah,
where I make 4 or 5 transfers here, and I didn't.
exactly.
I would be like last week. I was looking, thinking, oh, my team's looking pretty good. It's fallen away quick. So best time to wildcard is going to be the subject of debate over the next 10 minutes or so. Get your questions in about that while we address it with Big Man. What do you think, mate?
It's an interesting phase because a lot of managers are in the same boat where they don't really necessarily like their team into the week. But I've put some time into this, and I was preparing a wildcard draft for the show and for my thread. I couldn't really come up with a wildcard draft either that I liked, honestly. But A, because the funds are tight and with the price changes so volatile, it's not easy to afford a good team. And B,
Yeah.
because most of the teams that people are picking, let's say the likes of Villa, Liverpool, West Ham, they don't necessarily have the best of fixtures in the next 2 weeks, especially Aston Villa and West Ham, which a lot of people are doubling, tripling up on their game week 8 wildcards. That's one of the reasons why I'm not exactly tempted to wildcard, despite the fact that price changes are happening like crazy, and it is becoming very difficult to afford um, an ideal team by the minute. But it's just something you've got to live with. I highly doubt that even those managers on a wild card will be very confident with their teams heading into game week 8.
Yeah, you're right. And like the injuries that everybody is picking up is making things much more difficult. I always had my eye on the international break as an obvious place to kind of reflect and then on the back of that, see what my team was looking like and kind of go from there. I imagine, was it game week 10? Is it something like that when we come back from the internationals? I imagine most people had that outlined at that point. I mean, given that you have not had the start that you probably usually have in FPL, are you
Yes.
feeling more pressure than ever on this chip?
Yes, but again, I think that's the key thing. A lot of people are sort of panicking into a wildcard this week because they are doing terribly, and they just want to get rid of the United, Chelsea, etc., whatever underperforming assets they have in their team, irrespective of the fact whether or not it is the best thing for their team, right? Because they just feel pressured into doing it. I mean, I might do it myself if, let's say, I get 1 or 2 injuries in my team, because I'm confident that I won't do it. But let's say if 1 or 2 problems emerge in my team, then I will probably switch and decide to wildcard, because I don't think I can take too much pain of having uh, underperforming players in my team. But then again, I think the best time to play it should be. I mean, it's easier said than done. Should be when your team needs it, regardless of the fact that whether or not you've been performing well in recent weeks. A lot of good players have not performed. Like I genuinely believe that if you look at a lot of the top managers, their ranks this season aren't as good as they usually are.
Mm. Yeah, exactly. And that's what's made things interesting in the game as a whole. Like a casual has the potential to do better than normal because the template hasn't quite paid off in the way that a lot of the content creators might have expected it to. And because there's that pressure on all the content creators to compete with each other and not leave out certain players, if those players don't perform, it opens the door for others to do well. Mark Nash says, best time to wildcard was game week 3. It served me well anyway. Well done, Mark. That seems like it's done well for you, but who knows? You might need that later on in the season, mate. But well done for starting off well early doors. Thanks to everybody else that has been joining us. Say about my wildcard needs. At the moment, I've got Saka flagged. I've got I don't know what. Baldock's been sat on my bench with a flag on his name for about 4 weeks now. It's starting to wind me up. Gusto's there, like unusable, like getting 0 points. And then I've got players like Archer, who's in there as my third attacker. He was okay as a third. I've got Andreas Pereira in there. He's not playing well at all. Don't want him anymore. I've got Gvardiol, who I don't want anymore because he's a bit of a risk and he's not getting me good points across the season. Don't even know if I want Onana in goal anymore. So, when I'm faced with decisions like that, I'm like, am I brave enough to actually wildcard? Like you say, it's hard to find a draft that works.
It is, but again, it's team dependent. For example, in my team, I already have Son. I already have Udoki. I can get to Madison this week as well, so I can get to triple Spurs quite easily. And I think that's the major carrot for those who are wildcarding this week, whether or not they can afford triple Spurs.
Yeah.
So, for example, I don't know what your team is, but if you don't have triple Spurs or don't have an easy route of getting to them, then I would be very tempted to wildcard, especially considering that the rest of the team looks suboptimal, like you've said.
Yeah. No, I can get to triple Spurs. So I'll have Udoji. I've already got Udoji and Son, and I will most likely I'm going to be switching Saka to Madison. So I'll be covered. I just hope that Spurs don't let us down in that game, because it's the early kickoff, isn't it?
It is.
Like, surely they won't. But I keep writing off Luton because I really do not rate them at all. And I wrote off Morris last week as a bad pick, and then he scored, and I was like, okay, well, I said he would score 1. Let's hope he doesn't score again. But that's where we are at right now. People, keep your comments coming in. We are going to go through all the questions in a bit. We are going to address wildcard issues right now. And we are now going to be looking into must-haves on a wildcard. Big Man has been good enough to start looking at some issues and some players that, if we are going to pull the trigger right now, if we are going to build a new team, the players that we cannot afford to pass us by. So do you want to address that issue, please, mate?
It's an interesting one. I think Son is the first one, who I'd say has to be the first name on the team sheet. Is going to be the default captain, the template captain this week, I assume, because Arsenal are playing Man City, so a lot of people will not go for Haaland. Other than Son, it's not exactly easy. I mean, I would probably classify as Salah as a must-have on the wildcard as well, given that a lot of us will be wildcarding game week 10 and unlikely to go with Salah because of Liverpool's upcoming run of fixtures. They have a very good run of fixtures. I mean, this week isn't ideal, but Brighton away is also all right. Brighton defensively are a bit suspect. After this week, Liverpool have Everton, Forest, Luton, Brentford. That's a really good run of fixtures. So I like the fixtures for Liverpool. So Son and Salah are 2. Mm-hmm. I would also have Areola, because I don't think there's a standard goalkeeper to own. And when there's no standard goalkeeper to own, then it's just best to go with the cheapable option. Yeah. And Areola is starting, has started every game this season. He is starting, and West Ham are looking like a decent side. They've made some good signings. They're looking competent. They have a good run of fixtures coming up as well after this week. So Areola would be my third. He would sort of give me extra funds to spend in midfield and attack. Other than that, I've seen a few teams without Haaland. I mean, those teams do look beautiful because you can spread the funds elsewhere. But I don't think I'm brave enough to recommend doing that, because, I mean, Haaland's numbers, his underlying data, even against the big 6 teams which he is going to face in the coming weeks, is really good. So I can't sort of advocate going without Haaland, despite the fact that there is a world where those teams do look very strong. But I mean, even then, Haaland could possibly be captained in game week 9 against Brighton, against Bournemouth in game week 11. So it is a strategy which is fraught with risk, and I don't personally like it. So that makes it 4. Other than that, I don't think there's anyone who I would classify as a must have on the wild card. I
Mm.
don't think so.
Just 4 players in a new wildcard must-have list. That's interesting. So
Yes.
Son, Salah, Areola, and Haaland, they are big man's recommendations if you are wildcarding. Do not miss those guys. Let us know in the comments if you agree or if you have any alternates that you would be too scared to let pass you by right now. Like you say with Haaland, like obviously he's 14.1 million. Like we're not really getting the points reflected for that amount of money at the moment. He got a 13-pointer against Burnley, a 20-pointer against Fulham. But beyond that, it's all been very average stuff. But as you say, Arsenal at the weekend, then Brighton, and then Manchester United. They're the games where you want Haaland standing up and being counted and being like, okay, I'll see to this. I'll sort this out. Look, Man City have got a big game tonight against RB Leipzig. Let's see if they can get back on course after 2 defeats in a row. But yeah, you're very, very brave if you're going to go against Haaland. Our producer actually said to me before the show, I don't know if this was off the record, but I'm going to call him out on it anyway. He said, "Oh, I'm thinking maybe I should like use the money from Haaland, like get Højlund and then spread the money throughout the team." I was like, mate, that is bold, brilliant, or ridiculous, or stupid. I don't know what I'm classing this as right now. Certainly bold. That would certainly be bold.
It is, and I do see some logic to it. But personally, I still would, even if I have Salah, Son, I don't think I would captain either of them in game week 9 or 11 when Haaland is playing at home to Bournemouth and at home to Brighton, which just swings the decision for me. Which is why I'm sort of classifying him as a must-have. I mean, in defense, I don't necessarily think there's a must-have, but you can possibly go with one or two Spurs defenders. Or Doggy is one, Pedro Porro is another one who's really good.
Yeah.
So maybe one of them or maybe both. Matty Cash is another one who's the template pick on Wildcard. He's a good pick as well. Um, he's making plenty of runs, playing in attacking positions going forward. Will I have a good run of fixture? So he's one I would have. Other than that, I don't think there's a standout in defense. I don't think I would have Trippier in wildcard because I would need the funds up front in midfield and in attack. And the best fixtures for Newcastle have passed. Now they're slightly getting harder with time. I think Crystal Palace at home is the only easy fixture you can sort of classify in game week 9 that is left for Trippier. But other than that, I don't think I'd go with Trippier.
Yeah, fair enough. Aston Villa Bozzy says Watkins is a must-have backer. More points than Haaland, and we now have an amazing run of fixtures. He's also a form player, goes and scoring runs. Yeah, he really is a streaky player, Watkins. You probably don't know this, big man, but I got rid of him last week. I brought in Alvarez. He hadn't scored at that point. It was a disaster. And I'd been like absolutely adamant on this show. I'm sticking by Watkins because he will come good and he will repay. But at that point was when Alvarez was doing so well. Everyone was jumping on him and I just got caught up in it. So I haven't had Ollie Watkins for how many points he got in the last 2 game weeks? 32 points I've missed out on from him and made up for it with whatever, 12 or whatever it is from Alvarez. Watkins' run of games coming up is Wolves, West Ham, Luton, Nottingham Forest, Fulham. It's a really nice run of games for Ollie Watkins. I have to say, the Wolves game isn't as easy as it looks on paper. I think Wolves have a pretty good record against Aston Villa. I'm sure Aston Villa Bozzy will tell me if I'm wrong there, but I've got a couple of mates who support Wolves and they always seem to think they're going to do all right against Villa. So maybe it won't go quite easy, but he is a streaky player. So there is that to consider. But you don't think...
He is a very good pick.
Yeah.
No, I do think he's a very good pick, but I think that if you're getting Salah, if you're getting Son, if you're getting Haaland, some compromises have to be made somewhere, especially if you're getting Maddison. So in the 2 wildcard teams that I've made, I'm finding it very difficult to accommodate both of Maddison and Watkins. So it's a case of either or.
Oh, really? Yeah.
In most teams.
Yeah,
because
that's with
I don't see too many bargain midfielders that I can buy, cheap midfielders. I mean, Eze was one. If Eze was an option, he would have made the team much more affordable. But without Eze, it's difficult to accommodate and have everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. Bozzy says, I'm right. It's a derby. Wolves always step up their game for this one. Not this time, though. Yeah, Aston Villa fans are very confident at the moment, given the form and the mentality that they have managed to build. A few people have been saying in the comments that they're tempted to go no Haaland. I really hope that starts to happen. I'd love to see a moment in this season when people start jumping off him and making this game more interesting in terms of captaincy, in terms of just opening it all up a bit. I mean, I don't believe it will happen. Do you?
It would take some brave people to do it. I do see some people doing it, especially some of the analytics who might wildcard this week or in next week. They might look into it, but I don't think I'm brave enough to do it.
No, I
Most
don't.
people won't be.
No, absolutely. Mark says, have you noticed how Gabby Jesus never gets a mention these days? Last season, he was a must-have. Well, obviously, he scored last night in the Champions League. He got 5 points in the 4-0 win over Bournemouth at the weekend. In the few games before that, obviously coming back from injury and stuff, he scored a goal against Man United, but there's not been a lot else to report. So when you're looking at an £8 million forward, I think it's just been difficult for people to be convinced by Gabby Jesus. I don't think it's beyond reality that he can become a really good pick again this season and somebody that we do all want. But we want to see that consistency first, don't we?
Yep, we have to see more. And Arsenal next to City and Chelsea. He might become an option in wildcard 10, but not for now.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Keep the comments coming in. I'm going to keep going through them. But one thing we do need to discuss is Manchester United, who are on their knees right now. A defeat to Crystal Palace at the weekend. A chaos game last night against Galatasaray. I described it on Twitter as like watching a charity game. It was like watching Soccer Aid or something. Like it was just like it was extremely entertaining, but it was absolute chaos, and you had no idea what was going to happen next. So what do we do with Man United midfielders going forward? You've already said that you probably are going to keep faith in Bruno and Rashford. But is that because of lack of alternatives rather than genuine
Yes.
belief of return?
To be very honest, yes. I mean, obviously, I've been sitting here since game week 1, quoting the underlying stats and data. So our producer, when he reached out to me before the show for the stats, I said I'm not doing any stats for the United mids this week. They've been pointless. So uh, let's just talk generically, and that's what I'm going to do with the United mids. I think the lack of alternatives make them easier to hold. But if you don't have Son, if you don't have Madison, then I believe they're worth selling.
Yeah, I mean, let's talk Rashford first. I mean, there was the moment in the game last night when he's bearing down on goal and then gets caught up in his own head about what's the right thing to do here. People think I'm always making wrong decisions. People think I hold onto the ball too long. Am I too selfish? Maybe I should pass. Maybe I should. Yeah, I'll pass. And then he passes, and it's definitely the worst option he could have chosen in that moment. And the moment goes begging, and then the way that Hoyland then finished his chance soon after, it was a similar. It was just on the slightly the other side of the pitch.
Yeah.
Like Hoyland comes from a different angle and just bears it on goal, gets in front of the defender. Lovely finish. That's what Rashford would normally have done, isn't it?
Exactly. And one thing I've noticed over the past few weeks is that both Bruno and Rashford have sort of played more of a creative role as opposed to Rashford being the goal scorer like we saw last season. That's a dynamic that might be changing with Hoyland. I mean, it's a short sample size, small sample size, but over this small spell, uh, Hoyland is the clear goal threat in the United attack, and Rashford and Bruno are creating chances for him.
Yeah, it's Brentford next at Old Trafford. Old Trafford is not a fortress. Old Trafford is a bit of a nervous place now. I don't know what to make of that game, but one thing for sure is Brentford are not the version of Brentford that they were last season. So there is some hope here that perhaps you see the United version of the Crystal Palace League Cup game rather than the Man United version in the Crystal Palace League game. So it wouldn't surprise me if United did actually bounce back here and get like a 2-0 win. And if that happened, then Bruno and Rashford might well be in the points again.
I think it would be a high scoring game. I think when Brentford play 3-5-2, against some of the top teams, they're threatening on the counter, and I do expect them to score, especially against United. I think they'll score, and I think it could be a high-scoring draw. If I was to guess, something like a 2-all, similar-ish game to what we saw last night.
Hmm. That doesn't do Man United any favours at all. But yeah, I see your point. Is there any other Man United midfielders that are playing well that you would consider?
No, no. I mean, I saw a few guys with Pelestri, 4.4 million on Wildcard as an enabler, but we don't know whether he's going to play. And let's say if by some miracle United do pick up some form in the coming weeks, then at some point he might triple up on them later. He'd just block you from them. So I don't really consider Pelestri as an option.
Yeah, Anthony was seen again. Maybe
Yeah.
maybe in the midst of an on-pitch crisis, it was a good PR moment to just get Anthony back on the pitch without anybody noticing. I'm not sure, but obviously Anthony, 6.8 million. His current ownership 0.6%.
Yeah.
So there you go. If you want to go really different, you go on Anthony.
Hoyland could be a good one. I don't think he's a terrible pick. The underlying numbers are fine, and I do think he's the main goal threat in the United team. So yeah,
Yeah,
if you're
I
looking
mean,
for a differential, I think he's all right.
yeah, Hoyland, let me just get this up to make sure I'm right. Yeah, 7.1 million and 5% owned at the moment. Hoyland is the real deal. Like, I'm absolutely convinced of this. I've been saying it on here for a couple of weeks now that I love the way that Hoyland is fitting into this team. So young, I was worried about the burden of being Man United's number 9, even with number 11 on his back, of just having the pressure, like never played in the Premier League or even close to it before, really, like on a regular basis. What can you actually get out this guy and how soon? Like the enthusiasm and the determination to make things happen and get on the end of things is unlike anything we've seen really in recent years from Man United. If you're talking about Man United strikers that have ever shown the potential to get towards 20 goals in a season, which really should have been a thing that Man United always are having come through. Wayne Rooney, Cristiano Ronaldo, Marcus Rashford looked like he'd have it before now. Those three guys, there's not really been anyone else. Van Persie, if you were to go back far enough, but United haven't really had that guy. Hoyland is going to be that guy. Like, I genuinely have belief in this guy that his goal scoring instincts are going to be there. I don't know that I would pick him now, like you say, but Brentford at home, Sheffield United away, take the Man City one out of the equation, and they've got Fulham, Luton, and Everton. Like, it's a really nice run of games here for Man United, apart from that Manchester derby.
Exactly. The fixtures are good, but then again, it's just about whether
It doesn't matter because Man United aren't very good anyway.
basically, it's just that United have been terrible, and they just have not been converting their chances. So it's a punt. Let's face it. Despite the fact that he scored yesterday, he will remain a punt.
Yeah, absolutely. Right, let's get to the real action here. It's time to really look at what a wild card draft would look like. So Big Man, as you said, has been very busy behind the scenes in the past couple of days and nights, I'm sure, just looking at various options. Do you want to talk us through what you've come up with here, Mo?
It's a rough template draft of what I see from most teams who are wildcarding this week. Areola in goal, Cash, Udogie, Byrne in defense, Diaby, Son, Madison, Salah, Alvarez, Watkins, and Haaland up front, with 0.0 in the bank. Now there are different variations to this. I mean, you could argue that having a 4.4 mid isn't ideal because you want to have 5 premium midfielders you can switch around, or you could argue that having 4 million defenders is probably a bit too much because it leaves you with little to no bench cover. I personally would either sell Madison or Watkins in this draft, and I would look to have a better mid and go 3-5-2 possibly, and with a better, let's say, someone like a Gabriel, I would definitely have on the wild card, because I do think Arsenal's defense is very good to own from game week 10 onwards, and Gabriel at 4.7 will be great value. I think there's that. I would have Lamptey probably as the 3.9. There's news that Stupinan is set to miss a run of games. Actually, he's injured, and he will be out. Yes, the news just came out 5-10 minutes ago. If a Stupinan is out, then Lamptey at 3.9 is a very, very good pick on the wild card, and I would definitely have him in that case.
If Estupiñán is injured, I think I'm going to have to wildcard. Like that will be like 4 players that I've genuinely got missing from this team, and then 2 other players that I don't want anyway. So I think I'm going to have to start looking at your wildcard draft a lot more seriously than I was half an hour ago, mate.
Yeah, Stupinan is also he's been ruled out for a few games. So yeah, Lamptey is another one I would have. And yes, I mean I've spoken about some of the glue guys. I would have Son, Salah, Haaland. Alvarez is a good one, I think, as well. I don't see him in a lot of drafts, but I think Alvarez is a good pick because he's the sort of guy who's going to keep chipping along. He's going to keep ticking along with the points, and he'll be consistent at least in this form. Keep an eye out on Diaby though. If Diaby is out, then again, where do you go for with the semi-priced midfielder? Would you go for Mitoma? The fixtures aren't ideal, but Brighton, they have a good attack. They can score against anyone. So maybe Mitoma.
Yeah, I don't know what Neto's fixtures are beyond this weekend.
Yeah, his fixtures are good.
Are they good? Yeah, Neto's probably what I'd be looking at.
Neto's really good. Really good
where
fixtures.
I would be going, and as I say, I would be tempted if I was to make a change to the attack to somewhere in there have Højlund, but the 3 you've picked are the most obvious 3 picks to go for, especially if you want to have the option of playing 3 attackers rather than just 2 like I've had all season so far. Let's just see what a few people are saying here, because I saw a couple of comments that I wanted to address. Yeah, Robert says, with this wildcard, you'll run into major issues if someone gets injured. Anderson, major gamble. Same with the defense. Feels risky for 0 in the bank.
Exactly. I completely agree with it, which is why I do think that I would compromise on one of Watkins or Maddison and spend the money in defense.
Yeah, interesting. What you said, you found it hard to come up with a wild card draft that you liked enough to trust in order of if you were to pull the trigger right now. I'm just thinking here off the top of my head based on my own team, but I'm like, I might even have to maybe I take a -4 this week and make 2 changes to get a team out. What would your advice be on do you think this is a good week to make a change? Generic. I know you're saying it depends on people's circumstances, but given the fixtures, given there's an international break coming, given people seem to be picking up some injuries.
It's all right if you have, let's say, plenty of injuries in the 11. If you can't get to Son easily, if you can't get to triple Spurs easily, then yes, it's a good week. Why not? I mean, it's very team specific. I mean, half an hour ago, I was sitting here saying that, I won't be wildcarding, and I'm just 1 or 2 injuries away from wildcarding, and it turns out that Superman is injured. So
yeah,
that doesn't help my case either. So again, these are tough times, and we've got to just make some tough decisions. I mean, now it's up to me whether I decide to limp across the line for the next 2 weeks or whether I just pull the trigger.
Yeah, and that's exactly what it is. It's like limping along at the moment because I'm thinking, okay, well, what's the least amount of points I can expect from this team that I've got? And you're like, can I still be in a decent spot in 2 weeks' time if I keep going with my side? Potentially, yeah. And like I just saw, Resting Pilgrim says even a -8 is better if you can hold the wild card. Yeah, I still don't like taking a -8, but
I don't necessarily agree with that. Because again, especially if you've decided that you're wildcarding in game week 10, then why take the -8? I mean, just do it right now.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, and in my head, if I was that close to it, then you're right. But maybe if people aren't as close as me to putting the trigger on that, then that would be a fair point. There's a question from Robert that says, "Is the Estupiñán injury already confirmed, and how bad is it?"
He's set to miss a few weeks, apparently.
Yeah, so I'm just reading a tweet from a friend of mine, Mike McGrath, who works at the Telegraph, and he's tweeted that Estupiñán was injured when taken off at the weekend against Villa and is set to miss games starting with Marseille tomorrow. He said it's the curse of the left-backs this season. Reguilón, Shaw, Malacia, Chilwell, Timber, Rico Henry. Don't be a left-back. If you've got a left-back in your team, get them out before they get injured. It's a bad time to be a left-back. But yeah, Estupiñán is going to be missing at the weekend at the very least, it looks like. I did see a question earlier on, Bozzy, I think it was you that asked about Harry Maguire and why he's not being considered. So just going back to when we talk about Man United assets, I actually agree with this, and I was talking to someone at Give Me Sport earlier on today, and they were talking about the absence of Lisandro Martinez, and I think it's pretty clear that without Martinez in that defence, you are missing a leader. United don't have a dominant voice. They don't, given as well that you've got Amrabat now at left back, and you've got Onana behind, who haven't got that United feeling about them yet. Having Maguire in that team actually has its benefits. Maguire played well last week when he played. And like there's this general feeling in the online community that just overtakes everything because there's so many people that just want to hate on Maguire, and he's really not that bad. And sometimes there has to be an argument that he comes back in for Man United. Now, from an FPL point of view, no, I'm not going to be picking Maguire, but I'm just trying to argue because the point was put up that I do think that Harry Maguire should be given opportunity, because if he's not giving, bless you, sir, if he's not given opportunity now, what's the point of him being there? Like, why keep him around at all? Like, just let him go on loan for free or something if you're not going to play him now. Because Man United are absolute disarray, and you've got to give people a chance. If Van der Beek's getting a run out, if Martial's getting a run out, then just give Harry Maguire a run out too. He's really not as bad as people say. Right, Savio says the wildcard now is being used to field 11 players in most cases, rather than to take advantage of a great run of games.
This is true. This is very, very true, and that's exactly what I'm trying to say. Like, even though there are a lot of people who I'm sure do not necessarily want a wild card, but those flags with on Saka, Stupinan, and just Sterling's a bit of a tout. Diaby's become a tout. I don't necessarily know what to do with them anymore. What are your thoughts on Sterling, by the way? Actually, now that I've brought it up, I want to hear your thoughts.
Sterling, I don't think will be playing at the weekend. I mean, obviously depends on whether Mudrik's fit too. But Cole Palmer played really well against Fulham on Monday night. That's the third good outing in a row that he's had. They're going to find it really hard now to leave Cole Palmer out of the team. Raheem Sterling, he went through that spell where he had 3 good games in a row, which we hadn't seen from Raheem Sterling for like 18 months or something. And then he did it. I was like, okay, maybe we've got the full version of Sterling back, but it's fallen away again. I wouldn't be touching him. Like, I just wouldn't be touching him. I thought, actually, Gianni said on here on Monday that he thought Sterling might start as the 9 because Brozier had been out so long that he wouldn't get the start. And that didn't happen. Brozier got the start. I just don't think Sterling is doing well enough to be considered for a lot of minutes. And I don't feel like he's being decisive enough to force his way into that Chelsea team. If Chelsea are genuinely on a pathway where they want to look to building this bright future with all these young players, and he was supposed to be one of the leaders of that as a senior player, don't think he's doing it. I don't think it's going to work out. And it wouldn't surprise me, to be honest, if we got to January and there was talk about Raheem Sterling leaving Chelsea, because it's been mentioned before and it will get mentioned again. I wouldn't be thinking of him as an asset in this game at all. And I have to say, actually, Cole Palmer, from the eye test of me being at Fulham game, he was dangerous. Like, I don't love him out in the wing. I prefer him centrally in like the 10. Where he played in the League Cup against Brighton last week, and he was really good. He was still really good, and Fulham found him really hard to deal with. So if there was a Chelsea attacker that I was to try and get in, it sounds weird because it's not something that anyone's probably considering right now, but Cole Palmer would probably be that one.
Interesting, because I'm sitting here with Sterling as well now, and I am in a position where I can sort of use a defensive transfer to sell Stupinan for, let's say, a cash or a borrow, or use that transfer from Sterling to Maddison. Now, Sterling has a good fixture this week, and there's been this talk in the community that he was rested because he didn't train, he was ill. While that's true, but now that Chelsea won, there could be doubts about him and his starting position. Like you've said, Palmer did play well. If Mudryk is unfit, then obviously there's more of a case. But even then, Maddison could play on the left like he did at the weekend. So it's a very tough decision, and it's a tough call to make.
It is, because even ahead of that weekend, before there was any talk of him being ill or anything, I had been told that his place was in jeopardy. So I think Sterling, I was led to believe there was a chance Sterling wasn't going to play in that game anyway. And like you say, there's Maatsen there that can come in if Mudryk isn't fit. Noni Madueke did actually come on. I know it was only in the last minute of Fulham, but he was reintroduced. So, like, he's still in the fold there. And Madueke, like, they're going to have to start giving him minutes. Like, this guy is desperate to make his impact at Chelsea. So there's that to consider as well. They've got plenty of options generally going forward. And obviously, at some point soon, there is going to be talk about when is Nkunku coming back. I mean, I think it's currently talked about as November, December, but we'll have to wait and see. But this all has to be figured out in terms of like whether there's even going to be a place for Sterling at the club, especially if Ben Chilwell is now being seeded as a left-sided attacker. There's going to be too many players up there, and Chelsea are going to go and try and sign a number 9 in January. So it's all going to get a little bit out of hand. Bozzy says, I'll make it easy for you, everyone. Just don't have any Chelsea attackers. Have you seen their run of games? Stay away. Honestly, though, it was the best they've played this season. They didn't play well against Brighton when they beat them in the League Cup. Chelsea were not good that day. But against Fulham, yes, we made them look good because we were poor, but they did click a little bit. Caicedo looks pretty good. Conor Gallagher played pretty... It just seemed like the first glimmers of a team that might be coming together.
Defensively, they've been all right. It's basically they've just not been converting chances at the other end, and they did at the weekend, which is just basically been the main difference.
Yeah, Gianni's celebrating having Levi Colwill jump off his bench. I think he got him 12 points. Or something. Did he get him 12 points at the weekend on Monday?
He
I think he did, didn't he? Yeah. That's disappointing for us. Mark says Chelsea played well because of their central three midfield. Yeah, they totally dominated Fulham. There's not many teams that have done that to Fulham. Palhinha usually runs things, and Palhinha not much influence on that game at all, which is honestly so surprising. That doesn't happen much at all. Right, let's move on. Big Man, we haven't seen your team yet. So we've seen your wildcard draft. We've seen the team you don't want to go to yet. Let's see what your team is like in reality.
This is my team. At the moment, Pickford in goal. Have Stupinan starting. I mean, I'll probably bench him now for Kabore, Udogi, Trippier, Mbomo, Son, Rashford, Fernandez, Sterling, Haaland, Alvarez. I have one free transfer and I have 1.3 million in the bank. So I can either address the Sterling to Maddison issue by just bringing Maddison in, but then I will have a defensive problem because I'll have to play Kabore, and that is by no means ideal. I can either just sell a Stupinan for Porro or cash, and just hope that Sterling starts, or I can take a hit. That's the other option that I have, and obviously the fourth option is the wildcard.
Yeah. How
before the Stupinan news broke out, I was sort of looking to perhaps bring in Maddison for Sterling, but now I'm not entirely sure. And again, a lot of this will depend on my assessment of whether or not I believe that Sterling will start at the weekend.
Yeah. How do you generally feel about taking hits? Is it something that you try to avoid, or are you just like go with the feel of it?
I do try to avoid them, but it's not as if I'm not open to taking them. I do take them when I feel as if it's necessary for the team. The only reason why I'm hesitating right now is because with a wild card in 2 weeks' time, it's not ideal. I bought Bob Botman last week, and the fact that he has been injured has basically scuppered all my plans because I don't know whether he's going to be fit by even game week 9, which is sort of it's brought my plans into jeopardy, and I am a bit all over the place now with regards to my team.
Yeah, and I mean, the problem that you're also going to have here, if you did swap Sterling for Maddison and you brought Kabore into the back line, then you're going to have a lot of players from just 2 fixtures because Man United and Brentford also playing against each other there. So you would have Mbomo, Rashford and Fernandez playing in the same game, and then you'd have Son, Udogi, Maddison and Kabore all playing in the same game. So that's quite heavy.
Exactly. I don't mind the United mids as such, the United mids and Bomo playing against each other, because as I've said, I do expect that to be a high-scoring game. But yeah, the defense will be weak. The third defender will definitely be very weak, and that's something that might need my attention. So I haven't completely ruled out a wild card yet, to be very honest with this news. I will definitely go back to the drawing board and consider it again.
Mate, you've got a very busy week ahead of you, haven't you?
For sure.
Bozzy says you need to use your wild card. You're going to fall too far behind. Big Man keeping Mbomo. Yeah, he's just said he fancies there to be goals in the Man United Brentford game, and if you're going to back a Brentford goal, it's going to be coming from Mbomo most
He's
likely.
going to be playing up top most probably, right? So if
Yeah,
he's playing in the 3-5-2, then he's going to be playing up top. And after this week, Brentford have Burnley at home. So I'm fine keeping him. I think there are bigger fires in my team to put out than
yeah.
selling
Look,
random
if
bums.
Galatasaray can score 3 goals at Old Trafford, then Mbomo can get one. Yeah, absolutely. Mark Nash, who's I think flying in the game this week, I think he's in the top 12k, says 4 of that midfield get nowhere near my team. Well, that's because you played a wild card in game week 3, Mark. You were able to already address your issues. We are not all as well prepared as you right now. So Mark's made his moves. I mean, that was a brave move, but he has his standing in the game, his rank right now is reflected by the fact he made that early wildcard call and it's paid off. So that's brave, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, all those who've wildcarded early and gotten rid of the United assets have timed it to perfection. And gotten on Villa as well. A lot of them have gotten on Villa. So congratulations to you in that case.
Right, Connor says, who scores more points, Alvarez or Trippier for the next 10 weeks? Go on, mate. You try and have a go at that one.
For the next 10 weeks, I mean, I'm struggling to predict for the next 2 weeks, let alone the next 10 weeks. Next 10 weeks, I would probably go with Trippier. Just
Yeah.
because you never know with City at what point Alvarez becomes a rotation, etc.
Yeah, Trippier's going to be there all the time. Keep your questions coming in, people. We will blitz through these now. I know there were loads earlier on that we probably haven't got to. Gary says, Tony to Chelsea. Not at the moment, Gary. Maybe one to address in January. £70 million it would cost for Chelsea to go and get Ivan Toney. I'm just saying no to that. Like, I can't believe that is what Chelsea would see as the answer. Like, if you're really, really worried about where things are, go and find a way to get Osimhen. Like, do that, because Osimhen takes you into a different conversation in the world of football. Ivan Toney is a good Premier League player. He's not changing the game. Like, he's not the guy that's suddenly turning into Champions League material, as far as I'm concerned, anyway, at £70 million. So that's an interesting question. Thanks for getting it in. Mark also says, has Tony held his FPL price? I've got no idea. I obviously haven't looked at him at all. I presume it just stays, does it?
I am not sure. I haven't looked at it as well either because I've just not considered him at all.
Yeah, I'm going to load it up right now. Tony is at
It's
7.9.
7.9. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
7.9.
dropped.
He's 0.1% owned, which means someone out there has owned Ivan Toney for the last 7 weeks. So nice. Mark says Osimhen's got the hump with Napoli. Yeah, they're trying to repair relations, but let's see how that goes by the time Christmas has been and gone and we actually get stuck into the transfer window. Robert, is it fair to say it's only viable to go for defenders who can assist and midfielders who can either go for bonus points consistently or are goal scorers? It feels like everyone just concedes for fun.
I mean, it's a valid point. There have been more goals than usual this season, but I mean, someone like Newcastle defensive centre backs have done particularly well. So there are teams where you will get defensive points if you time them correctly.
Yeah, and Savio says still no love for 3-4-3. I mean, in your wildcard draft, I mean, if you're going for an Alvarez, Watkins, Haaland trio, there's definitely going to be a temptation to go 3-4-3. But generally, I haven't seen that many people going for it.
I mean, I do think the front line of Alvarez, Watkins, Haaland is fine. Let's say if it helps you afford a good defense, then I don't really mind a 3-4-3. I mean, I know plenty of managers who've had Watkins, Alvarez, Haaland over the course of the season, and they've done really, really well.
Yeah. Sokan says, what is Bakar'S dead-ending punt for game week 9?
So again, this depends on what I do this week. I have shortlisted 2 transfers over the next 2 weeks. One involves Stupinan out for, let's say, a cash or a Poro. The other involves Sterling out for maybe a Madison, or let's say in game week 9, if we have news that Jota is starting or Diaz is starting at home to Everton, I'd want a piece of that. So
Yeah, I have to say,
it depends on the strategy that I take.
yeah, game week 9 is Tottenham against Fulham. Obviously, I'm a Fulham fan. I do go to a lot of games, and tickets went on sale for Tottenham versus Fulham. It's on a Monday night at 8. It's not that easy to get to Tottenham from where I am. It's a late night, and it wasn't cheap either. And I was like, do you know what? I'm going to give that a miss. I do not fancy Fulham's chances at all of getting something out of that game. So if you're considering Tottenham assets for this week because of their game against Luton, the fact that they've got Fulham next week, it's a Fulham team that have got no confidence at the moment. And the performance I've just seen against Chelsea, as bad, probably the worst performance I've seen actually under Marco Silva, which is not a good place to be. So just keep that in mind that a Madison and Son and Udoji pick for this week also looks good the week after. Right, 79 million for Ivan Toney, who has a dodgy back, is ludicrous. Julian Alvarez cost City 14 million pound. How good was that transfer? It's an outrageous transfer. Like, that is a brilliant one. Testimony: Bowen or James Ward-Prowse. Do you know what? I've got James Ward-Prowse just because I couldn't afford Bowen, but I'd be going Bowen all day long.
I would be going with Bowen as well. I mean, he's playing practically as a striker, given his average position these days, and he is the goal scorer in that team. And I really like West Ham's fixtures from game week 10. And when you look at the underlying data from midfielders, Bowen is in the top 3 for non-pen XG. So I really, really like him.
Yeah, exactly. Like, he takes up wide positions, but undoubtedly looks to get as close to that goal as he can. And he's strong. He's brilliant. Bowen at the moment, very, very good form. Tom has Eze and Botman, Saka, and Estupinan. Do I drop Eze for Bowen? I mean, yeah,
I think it's a good transfer, and it's a transfer that's going to save you another transfer that you'll probably have to bring Bowen in 2 weeks.
Yeah, definitely. Be interesting to see what West Ham do in the transfer window as well in January. They're on the lookout for a striker at the moment. Punter says, who are the best 3 defenders in the game right now?
I mean, it's very, very difficult to pick. For let's say in the short term, I would probably say Cash, Poro, and the third one is tough to say. Maybe Burn from Newcastle.
Burn is an underrated pick at the moment, that's for sure. Like, he definitely, with the Botman injury, Burn becomes a lot more interesting. Akim says, I am in the 1.2 million rank now. Is it still possible to get a good rank, like the top 10k, by the end of the season? I mean,
of course it is. There's a long time to go.
It's a long time to go. And you just saw with Gianni, for example, like a couple of weeks ago, he was way behind me on terms of, let's say, like 35 points, say, behind me. And then he got his super score of like 112 or whatever it was last week. And he jumped a ridiculous number of places. I think he was like 1.6 million. I went up to something like 500,000. Like, that's the sort of movements you're getting off one big, good game week at the moment. So yeah, Akim, like, your season's very, very much alive. Like, 1.2 million rank at the moment is absolutely fine. That is not that bad.
Do you think Højlund is a good differential? Yes, of course. We've already spoken about him, and I think he's a very solid pick.
Yeah, it's a really solid pick, Charlie. Ignore the Manchester derby, which you can, we'll see what happens in that game. But the other fixtures, very welcoming, and Højlund looks a great source of goals at the moment. He's one of my favourite players, actually, to watch. If you just like pick out a player from a game that you're just going to watch his movements, watch what he's capable of, just watch Højlund. What else was I going to go to? There was another one I saw a second ago. If you've got a question, get them in, guys. We've got 2 more minutes here, and make sure you do like the feed, please. Gamil says, I have improved my squad depth after the wildcard, but decisions have become so tricky to make in terms of who to start. Should we start Archer this week ahead of Morris?
I would go with Morris simply because I think he's on penalties. With Archer, there's the chance that he's on penalties. I'm not entirely sure.
Don't know about that. That's a good point. Archer does play against Fulham, and I've got Archer in my team more as just a facilitator than anything else. But I have to say, after watching Fulham Monday, I'm like, honestly, I might throw Archer in there. Like, we are dead at the
But
moment, and
so Sheffield United. So Sheffield
I
United.
know, but that's the thing. Like, they're bottom of the league. Like, my little boy, he comes to the games with me. He's like 5, and it's funny. He got like 4 o'clock in the morning after the game on Monday night. He came in and he's like standing there. I was like, "What's up?" And he's like, "What was the Fulham score?" And I was like, "We lost 2-0." And he's like, "Oh," and he was like really sad. And I was like, "It's okay, mate. Like, we'll talk about." So I was like, "What on earth is going on here?" 4 o'clock in the morning, I got a 5-year-old asking me how Fulham got on. And then he says to me in the morning, he goes, "Dad, I was thinking, are we playing Sheffield United at the weekend?" And I was like, "Yeah." He goes, "Good news. They are last, so we will definitely be beating them on Saturday." I was like, love the optimism. Not so sure. not so sure, but it was a very sweet moment. Bless him. Right, last question. Ben says Diaby and Bowen versus Son and Anderson with Salah, Gordon, and Maddison. What do you make of that conundrum?
I would probably go with Son because of the fact that he's the captaincy option this week.
Yeah, do you think a lot of people will do it? Are you tempted?
Yes,
Yeah.
I will definitely do it. I will definitely.
Yeah, I'm doing it too. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not considering Haaland actually. I think it's fairly clear cut in my head. I mean, if you give me 75, 80 minutes of Son against Luton, I would take that hands down.
Well, that's what worries me. It's like his son got this problem where they're going to take him off on like 58 minutes.
58 is a bit of an exaggeration. I don't think he's going to be taken off that.
I mean,
early,
but they could be
especially-
4-0 up against Luton, is what I'm saying. Like, what if that happened? If he's
Yeah,
got a hat
but
trick, it doesn't matter.
Exactly. If they're 4-0 up, then what are the chances of Son not being involved? I assume the odds are very low. So, yeah, I mean, Son is a goal scorer, likely penalty taker, captain for me.
Yeah, absolutely. I haven't even got Haaland as vice captain actually this week. I've got Mo Salah. Look, thanks for joining us again, Big Man. It's your show actually, not mine. So I should be grateful to be here as I'm never here on a Wednesday. Thank you, everybody else that has joined us for the FPL Emergency Room show on this Wednesday. We will be back on Friday, me and Gianni. I think we're doing it earlier in the day. So I noticed somebody earlier on was like, "Oh, you caught me out. I'm on American time. I just got up, just managed to catch the show." Keep an eye on our socials because I'm not entirely sure what time we're on Friday, but I think it's going to be an early drop. So keep your eyes peeled for us. Enjoy the Champions League. Enjoy the Europa League. Big Man, thanks again for joining us.
Thank you. Pleasure.
And we will see you all on Friday. Cheers.